We're being encouraged to vote for a Black Asian woman who's a prosecutor.
This wouldn't be happening if she wasn't viewed as a Black woman. All these attacks would not be happening from all those different angles if she was not seen as the intersection.
We eliminated cash bail in Illinois altogether. We passed historic bail reform. We introduced the End Solitary Confinement Act in California. Who gives a fuck about this symbolic loss of like you're being asked to vote for a cop? Who gives a fuck?
She has a very clear political change theory, which is that she believes you can change it from the inside. That's what she believes. And to be honest with you, she's been effective. It's worked.
I don't like the idea of none of us being in that space. And literally the exonerees that I've spoken to, 30, 40 years behind bars, they said, thank God for this prosecutor that came in.
They literally have tens of millions of people's data, and tens of millions of Black people are marked as dissuadable voters. So they don't even try to say Kamala Harris is Black, so vote for us. They just want you to stay a Black ass at home.
Today's episode of Olay Friends is brought to you by Raycon. That's right, your girl got a sponsor. Not only did I get a sponsor, I got a windfall because they sent your girl these cute Raycon earbuds in this like green matte case with this cute little, hold on, look, give me this cute little cover, little case to put it in, right? Ooh. I love how much variety Raycon has. They're available in a variety of different colors and textures. They even have new colors to complement any and all skin tones. Raycon's everyday earbuds now feature active, ergonomic design, multi-point connectivity that lets you pair with 2 devices at once, and active noise cancellation. Personally, I love to take 5-mile walks every day, and I don't want to hear not nary a man hollering at me on the street. So my favorite things about Raycon earbuds, the sound is amazing. When you put them in, you can't hear nothing. And 2, they stay charged forever. No, like seriously, the battery life literally holds up to 32 hours. And now they have a new quick charging feature, and just 10 minutes of charging will give you at least 90 minutes battery life. If you click the link in the description box below or go to buyraycon.com/Olay, you'll get 20 to 40% off your Raycon purchase plus free shipping. And that's buyraycon.com/Olay. And if you're not convinced, Raycon offers a 30-day happiness guarantee for easy returns. Thank you for sponsoring Olay and Friends, Raycon. We appreciate you. Hello, beautiful Black people. We are here today to discuss Kamala Harris. And I don't know where to begin because there are so many things currently in the discourse and in the zeitgeist, right? I think like I have thoughts around the misogyny on the discussion of having Meg Thee Stallion being at her rally. I think this has been a stupid ass discussion that the public is having that I think we should break down. Yeah. I also think the larger conversation that is happening around Kamala that I predicted would happen. I said there's been a rise of xenophobia in some pockets of Black America. We know which pockets they are. And I knew that was going to affect the way you saw Kamala being discussed, Kamala's Blackness being like attacked from different directions, right? Like it's the conversation on biracial identity, but then there's a whole nother, like, and the way people act and like, 2 things can be true. It's funny, she can't be Black, but she could be Indian. Like they're like, oh, she's not Black, she's Indian. It's interesting how we're doing this. And then the other conversation that I really want to talk about is that her unmistakably Black father, because he's Jamaican, they're saying that's not Black because of the conversation that I think I have been experiencing a lot. I've been because I'm an immigrant, so I knew firsthand, because I get it every day, how this has increased in the last few years of people saying non-American Black people are not Black and not wanting them to be like seen as such or included or represented. And I think now the rest of the country, I think this is a good time to talk about it because now other Black people who are not as chronically online and don't know these people are seeing it. So I'm going to give it to the room.
Well, I just want to say my name is Clay, and I turned Black when I heard Patti LaBelle out-sing Diana Ross in Motown Returns of the Apollo. That was when the melanin took over. I just in case Trump or Laura, whatever, is wondering. It's interesting. Reese and I were having this conversation earlier. I sometimes wonder this is happening in an echo chamber. because when I talk to people outside of social media, they are kind of stunned at the dialogue that's allegedly out there. Now, to be fair, I'm not from New York. I'm from Philadelphia. And growing up in Philly, I didn't see a large distinction between somebody who was Jamaican or Haitian. We were all Black. We're in a Black neighborhood. Philadelphia is very segregated. So I didn't see this large distinction. So when I see this bullshit now, I just feel like it's white supremacy gaslighting all of us. And they don't want to see Black folks on the same page because they're afraid of our voting power. If they could try to convince you that Vice President Kamala Harris isn't really Black enough, they're hoping from their Jim Crow spirit that you're not going to vote for her, that you're not going to show up for her, because they think we as Black voters, we only vote for folks because they're Black, because they're brown enough, or because they perform Blackness, right? And it's a sick, twisted way to look at it. I have to hope at the end of the day, it's not going to impact us as far as an election. But then again, Olayemi, I don't have your background. I mean, I've never. This is very strange to me. I'm a bit older than the rest of you. I'm 47 years old. I don't.
Oh shit, Clay!
And don't look it.
I try
Okay,
moisturize. No, but no filter either. No, but, you know, like I just remember us loving Marcus Garvey and people that I mean, obviously I wasn't born back then, but we worshiped Marcus Garvey and Shirley Chisholm and Malcolm X, and these were all people who had diverse backgrounds. So to see Blackness being dissected and chopped up this way is disturbing to me. But I know they're doing it because they're afraid of our collective power.
I saw this take on Twitter recently that someone was like, I think that Trump and his little MAGA intel people have been, as someone who's also chronically online, just like Olay is, they've been looking at discussions that have been happening in online spaces between Black people. And the strategy is they're using the words that they're seeing us use to create this chasm that has already been happening in very ignorant ways within the diaspora wars, as just we're kind of like, I think, unpacking what Blackness means to us. Different, we barely can understand race, ethnicity, and nationality, so we can't get to different ethnicities within the Black diaspora. So I think they've been using that strategy because, period, point blank, the right sees Kamala Harris as a Black woman. They see her as Black, which is why they're responding this way. They've been responding that way towards her since she's gotten she's not technically the nominee yet, but it's looking like she obviously is going to be. She's been met with misogynoir, off-rip, sexualization, just all types of stuff. So I think they're just using rhetoric that they're seeing how we're kind of fighting with each other, which really makes me, it really bothers me, because I know white people, they're not smart enough to create this chasm and use these, how do you know she's really Black? Because they are the ones who see us all really the same any motherfucking ways.
But they've always known it was to their advantage for us to not see it that way, right? Like the thing is, they're both observing us. They're observing conversations we're having now with the tools they gave us to have those conversations. Because there's a reason, like, white people, like, in terms of like how whiteness as a identity was crafted in America, they're white immigrants that were seeing America made an executive decision, white America, to recognize them as white people in order to create that kind of power around whiteness. But they've always fed, like, and not just in America, they've always, how colonization has worked across the Black globe is to feed Black people this anti-Blackness towards other Black people. And I know that from like being raised in the Bahamas, the way Bahamians would see Haitians, the way they'd see people like my father who was Nigerian, you know? So it's not even just in America. That's what colonization has always done, right? To create that kind of lack of unity between us. And if you look at like the rise of these groups, right? Like I experienced the particular groups where we're getting these talking points from, and I normally don't like to say their name, like damn Candyman, okay? But FBA and those and them, right? like those groups, which I maintain are white supremacist hate groups, right? And I'm glad other people are finally getting to see it, but I experience them by the drove every day. Like, they make videos about me, they tag me there in my comments on every app, so I know what it looks like. And I also have blocked thousands of them. Like, sat down and took the time to do it. So what I realized from doing this research, right? Like, one day, it was last year, on my birthday last year, I went and blocked everybody with FBA ADOS in their thing, and I went through all of their following. Like, I didn't just block them. No. I blocked everybody they followed and were following. And what I learned from going through that was a lot of this are white. They are, like, you will see it. They follow nothing but right-wing, white supremacists, bots and farms. So a lot of it, like, there's a reason why so many people are shocked in real life. I was just saying this to Garrison when we were talking before this, was my experiences. I think xenophobia is something that has been packaged to the entire Black globe, right? And my experience has never been that Black Americans are exceptionally xenophobic. I've been in this country now since I was 14 in 2008 to now. I have never heard this kind of dialogue before 2021 at the earliest. And now I hear it every day, right? But I look into it, and you can see that it's these, like, white supremacist groups, these bots, these farms. So the reason why they know about it and they knew to, like, pick up that talking point for Kamala is because they have been investing in bot farms and stuff for the last however many years and helping peddle that dialogue. And if you look at a lot of the places where it comes from, if you look at the kind of people that are, like, the leaders of those groups and talking about it, and look at who fund them and look at all this, you can see that it's tied. So it's like, yes, they're listening to us. They picked up on they're listening to us to know that we're having those conversations, but they also influenced why we're having those conversations.
And I guess I want to add, like, I really got angry about it when I saw what JD Vance said, him being the father of, like, 3 biracial kids. And I don't even know, like, how he had those kids. So I'm kind of like, ugh. But when he was like, oh, she weaponizes Blackness, I was like, oh, this is a manifestation of where we are at with identity politics and how it kind of arose to maybe demand more intersectionality in more liberal or left spaces, and now it's being weaponized against us. And I think one of the functions of that comment about Kamala is to, I don't know, I guess I'm thinking about, like, my best friend who's a Black woman. Like, after Biden got into office, she was like, oh, I was kind of glad when Trump was in office because Black people got a break. Like, they were just going after the immigrants. And so to me, it's targeting a certain area of Blackness where people are like, oh, maybe I don't trust her because she's that kind of immigrant, or maybe I don't trust her because she isn't committed to a certain kind of Blackness. And so that's where I think it's like, it's really insidious, because there are going to be people out there that are Black or POC or whatever that are going to be like, oh yeah, I guess she does kind of weaponize her Blackness, or why does she dance like that? And so, to everyone's point, it is feeding or picking up from these conversations that are happening diasporically online. And I think, if anything, our job, or the job of, like, people that support Kamala, is to, like, one, name how it's messed up, because I'm like, white people created the 1-drop rule in the first place, so how are you gonna take it back? And the second part is, like, I think it's, like, really weird where we're going, because I'm like, for me at least, as someone that doesn't support Kamala, I'm like, identity politics are being weaponized for people to be asked to support her, but I'm like, she's a Black former prosecutor, like, why would I support her? And on the other end, you can see that the right is trying to be like, well, she's not Black enough, or XYZ. And so I think it's interesting how these different dissections of Blackness show up, no matter what side of the aisle that you're on. And I think the danger is that it's being weaponized against us.
Yeah, I mean, I want to say 2 things. I kind of want to bifurcate this conversation just a little bit for a moment, because I do think that there are 2 kind of competing elements happening here at the same time. On the one hand, I think there is actually real value in specificity. So, like, I think that's necessary. When Martin Luther King Jr. used the term American descendants of slaves, he was talking about a very specific lived experience that comes from being the descendant of American chattel slavery here in the United States. And that experience has real economic and continued social impacts that are real, like very real and measurable to this day for those people who descend from that heritage. And so talking about not only the experience, but the culture, the cultural contributions of folks who descend from that particular heritage, I think is merited in its context. I think it's smart, it's important. And within my own lived experience as a person person who kind of descends from that heritage, my ancestors were slaves in this country. When I talk to my Jamaican friends or my Grenadian friends or Bayesian friends, like when I talk to people who are from the Caribbean or from West Africa, and they talk about their heritage and their cultural contributions and cultural heritage, all that, it's beautiful. It's beautiful, and it's specific, and it's different in these really interesting ways. And I think it's helpful to have language to describe the ways in which my culture is beautiful and specific and contributes in a different way. When it comes to the vice president, this is totally irrelevant. And I agree that there is an effort. I could almost name the people who are advising former President Donald Trump and his campaign on how to co-opt the language of Black Twitter in ways to drive division. And so we have to know that that's a real thing. It's not a conspiracy or a thought. Yeah. There are real people who are doing that, who are Black people in these spaces
to Black people,
and then they're using it in that way. But I do think that there is a kind of solidarity ethic that existed all the way back in slavery times when Haitian people overthrew their oppressor. There were all Black communities popping up across this country that named their communities Haiti, Hayti. That is a part of the Black tradition. There is a diasporic consciousness present in Black liberation. Abraham Galloway, a former slave here in the United States, got on a boat and rowed to Haiti to help them with their like that's a part of what we do and who we are. And I do think this is almost that union busting idea, and it's definitely what it is when Donald Trump deploys it.
Yeah.
Well, I think that, first of all, this conversation didn't start around Vice President Kamala Harris becoming the vice presidential nominee. This was the number one method of attack when she was running for president in 2019. The first debate, she got 80% of the attacks, of the negative attacks for all of the candidates. Mind you, these were 20 people on stage at the time. 80% of the attacks online were directed at Kamala Harris, and it wasn't around, oh, she just started supporting Medicare for all. I think that she should have been supporting Medicare for all since 2010 or whatever. It was around the issue of questioning her Blackness. Donald Trump Jr. was one of the first people to amplify this and activate a right-wing troll farm to push the narrative that Kamala Harris isn't Black enough. These groups that you've mentioned, they were weaponized against her, not just around the issue of her Blackness, but with things like so-called no reparations, no vote, tangibles 2020. When you look at it, because I've supported her since 2019 when she ran for president. So I looked at those hashtags and I said, okay, I haven't seen this before. Let me look and see what they're talking about. Who are they directing this to? Almost all of the tweets or posts were to Kamala Harris and to Cory Booker. There were 20 people running for president, and they were all directed towards Black people. And so it's not just Blackness and whether she's Black enough, but it's the issue around Black causes, around Black advancement that are being weaponized against her that aren't accurate. Let me be clear about that. And the assertions that they've made, that she said she's never going to say anything for Black people, when they put 5 seconds out of 15 seconds where she's literally explaining how doing things for Black people benefits everybody. All of these things have been weaponized against her. If there's any kind of weaponization of identity politics, it's actually weaponizing it against Black candidates. They actually are penalized more for how only Black candidates are asked, do you support reparations? Only Black candidates are asked, what is your Black agenda? Only Black candidates are asked, what are you going to do solely for Black people? Only Black candidates are asked for, where's our Black hate crime bill, when we've had Black hate crimes legislation since 1968. Right. You don't see these questions being posed to Mitch McConnell, to Mike Johnson. You don't see people chasing them down and going to their rallies, going to their fundraisers and having them on a hot mic, asking them any kind of questions. And so it's not just simply the issue of Black or Black enough. It's also the issue of what our community cares about, which data around that, evidence gathering around what our community cares about, isn't even what's driving the conversation about what our community cares about.
Right.
Yeah. And I guess all of that also makes me think, like, whiteness can police what Blackness is, but vice versa can't happen. And this is just literally a manifestation of that once again, but on the national stage.
And I also think too, it's funny, it's interesting, like seeing all these different, like these discussions of how they've co-opted, how they've been doing this, and the whiteness of police and Blackness. Because to earlier about what you said, Prince, about the one drop rule. It's funny, like they're the ones who gave us the one drop rule, and I think this is also a discourse they've seen us pick up on, because I think there has been a rise to nuance, right, to Garrison talking about why like some things in specificity are positive, right? Like there has been a rise of people talking about how I guess Black identity has been, especially if you look at like how media and entertainment has replaced like Black women with multiracial, you know what I mean? Like instead of, and you get a lot of that, people willing to like receive a lot of like multiracial people, or as the face of Blackness, as opposed to actual Black people, right? It's the way Hollywood, if they need a Black woman, they go run to like Zendaya and them, as opposed to someone who would phenotypically look like what you would think of as a Black woman. And so I think there's been a rise of, and I think there's merit to those discussions of people talking about how like one drop rule or something was racist, right? It's this idea that like your nasty Black blood can sully the whole thing, you're one drop and now you're Black, right? And so this has become this like something that is racist, and maybe that shouldn't be how we define Blackness. And that has come our sense of holding on to this one drop rule because of how our lived experience, you know, is that because America's racist. So the American people's lived experience is that if you have one drop, you're received and treated as Black. So you have a Black experience. And so we, and you know, in turn, embrace you as Black. And now there's been, I think, a conversation that keeps bubbling up of people feeling like they want to reshift our understanding of Blackness to be Black and allow multiracial people and biracial people to be this. And because I think all these conversations are happening and they're still being fleshed out, they're also able to take that, because there's some merit to discussions of that, you know what I mean? And then take it to weaponize it against a Kamala Harris to our detriment, you know, even though they see and receive and move like this. And to Reese's point, especially about reparations, is you're right. Reparations is a non-starter among every other candidate. You know what I mean? Anybody that's non-Black, they're never even considering it. There's no reparations that they have any interest in hearing. In fact, they use it as like to be against the candidate, but yet it's the minute a candidate is in any way a Black person, here we go. You know what I mean? And it's because they want us. They know how we feel about that discussion. Go, Prince.
But Sheila, can I just say, Sheila Jackson Lee is not ADO. Sheila Jackson Lee is not FBA, and she sponsored the HR 40 Commission every time. And I saw when the Reparations Commission passed in California, and I saw that group activate to say, oh yeah, look at what we got them. And they said that what was in Congress was bullshit. And I literally did a word match, and it was almost identical language in the HR 40 Commission reparations bill that Sheila Jackson Lee has been sponsoring for however long, and John Conyers before that, and all these other folks before that. It was nearly identical language. But because Sheila Jackson Lee is in Congress and their agenda is to try to undermine the CBC and try to diminish the Blackness of people in the CBC, that wasn't good enough. But what was in California was something to be celebrated about. So I don't have a problem with us having these discussions, but let's not be full of shit. Let's not be hypocritical. Let's not use it to try to discredit people. You know, people have sat up there and made videos. You talked about the abuse you've had. People made videos saying I was mulatto, which is a slur. I'm not. I got two Black parents. Okay. I've had, you know how many times somebody come on my page, this is not an FBA person. I am. I don't have, you know, acronyms and shit in my bio, but it's not about whether I am or not. It's what you are putting out there to try to discredit me, because we're not going to have a substantive conversation. We're not going to have a conversation that's based in facts and evidence. We're going to have a conversation that stays on the level of, you cannot speak on this because I'm ascribing this identity to you, and because you have this identity, then your opinion and your whatever you have to say, fact or not, is not valuable. And see, that's what I have an issue when it comes to not just Kamala Harris, but to all the discussions that we have as Black people around our political advancement.
I was just talking to Garrison about this. I actually just quote tweeted somebody yesterday. Somebody tweeted at me yesterday talking about, it's funny when I say I'm an immigrant, or, you know, people hear my accent, they act like they found something I was trying to hide from them, and then it's this disgusting truth. Like they're screaming, like they're like, oh, well, now that I know that you are an immigrant, I am offended. It is disrespectful for you to speak at all, for you to have an opinion on what happens in this country or this election, because I am not, it's interesting. I get that a lot. I was telling Garrison, like, even when I am actively advocating for the things in service of Black people or what these people want, they will literally quote tweet me and be like, oh, I liked what she had to say until I heard that nasty ass accent. You don't speak for us. You don't speak for FBA. You don't speak for those. And it's like,
yeah. You know what's interesting? I think I think part of the struggle that we have is just not knowing about race, nationality, ethnicity. But so I always tell people, biracial is not a racial identity. It's a racial descriptor.
Yeah.
And biracial does not always mean light skin. You think about Naomi Osaka. She's quote unquote biracial, if you like that term, but she's not a lighter skinned woman. So I think oftentimes that we're talking about what you're referencing as far as all these images of quote unquote multiracial people, we're talking more about colorism
Yeah.
than we're talking about being quote unquote biracial.
Yeah.
Again, I'm a little bit older than y'all.
I know you're right.
But I can recall when Vanessa Williams became Miss America and she had blue eyes and she was lighter skinned. And it wasn't about her being biracial. It was about, here is this light, bright woman who is now the first Black Miss America. Then when they kicked her ass out and stripped her of that crown and treated her terribly, then a lot of folks said, wait a minute. Oh, she is Black. Look at the way they're treating her. So when I hear about this obsession over Kamala Harris's nationality or her racial background, we're really just doing a descriptor of someone's racial background. But race in this country, it is legal. It is law. It's not just a social choice. Now, there are some people who may dance around it differently, but for the most part, it is a legal choice that really rules your life. It's written into policy. It's written into our everyday lives. It's in the actual census. According to this country, we have 5 racial identities. And that census rules our life as far as where funds are allocated. So I think oftentimes we're talking about biracial like it's a separate racial category. As of now, it's not. And it's an attempt to erase someone like Kamala Harris. And I could be wrong. If I'm wrong, correct me, y'all. I feel like I see it more with women than I do with men.
Yeah,
absolutely.
With Obama, you heard it a little bit in the beginning, but it was more about he wasn't born right. He wasn't even born in this country, which we know was bullshit.
Yeah.
But with women, it's this weighing, this blood quantum of Blackness, which is straight out of the antebellum South, that we're going to weigh almost some quadroon, octoroon bullshit. And that, for me, those are trappings that have always divided Black Americans. It's deeply, deeply dangerous. So again, I just like to always stress that we're talking about race, biracial. It's not a race. It's a racial descriptor. And I wish that we could have that distinction. I think it'll be better to understand that Kamala Harris is a Black woman with a diverse background.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot in my mind, because when I'm really thinking about the function of why they're calling her out in this way, I think it's to all of y'all's points. Like I was thinking earlier, I was like, oh, it seems like they're saying that she chooses when she's Black or weaponizes it because she's a woman and women are manipulative and they code switch or whatever. And so I think there's the layer of that. And I mean, that to me is like really dark and insidious. And I think, the other function I think is, it's messy, especially with what JD Vance said. Yeah.
I think it's also a desirability thing. I'd say the way that, like, not as someone who does benefit from desirability politics within Black experience, the way I've seen desirability with also my womanhood and that intersectionality, as opposed to like desirability within Black manhood, I haven't yet found the words, but I have noticed the same thing, Clay, and the same thing you're saying, Prince. It's like it's just a very specific intersectionality that happens where it's like also a lot of like Black women who benefit from desirability politics, colorism, textualism, etc., have weaponized that against Black women in the way that I don't really know if that has happened within Black manhood, because that's just not an experience I had. So I think that also, in a multitude of ways, and we know desirability politics. We could talk about, have a whole episode on that. So I think that also includes the manipulation aspect that Prince you're talking about. That it's like, if you can get this light-skinned Black woman and portray her as like she's weaponizing her Blackness, she's not Black, you're then now removing her from her base that would support her the most, which is Black women.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And distrusting her.
Because and I said this, I just like, listen, I'm so glad sometimes whenever I come up with an opinion, people go to bully you on the internet. I'm sure y'all all know. And it makes you start thinking like, am I tripping? Am I da-da-da? And then as it ages, you're like, no. But I did say Kamala would experience so many different intersections and cut-ups of these kinds of attacks, right? And I think what's happening here, I have a video on my page called how transphobia hurts Black women, and it hurts like cis Black women in particular. And in that video, I talk about the way like masculinity and femininity are, and the way like colorism functions and features within our community as it pertains to that, right? When it comes to like Black men, right? It's like colorism always functions that there is more privilege the closer you are to white, right? Like, so that will always be true, right? Whether men or women. But when it comes to masculinity versus femininity, masculinity, Black men, the darker Black man is considered more masculine, more strong, more this, to their detriment, and how colorism functions. They're more criminalized, more dangerous, more angry, more these different things. But in terms of masculinity, you know what I mean? That is more the desirability on a dark-skinned man as opposed to a light-skinned man, right? Like a light-skinned man doesn't threaten like masculinity in the same way. But in terms of femininity, right, which is how Black women are hurt by our traditional understandings of femininity and colorism, is that because dark skin is considered more masculine, the more feminine and more desirable are light-skinned women, and how that like functions in terms of privilege and what light-skinned women experiences in our community creates a real, you know what I mean? There's an actual real problem with that, and there's a real lived experience of Black women, you know what I mean? That has a problem with that, you know what I mean? Rightfully so. And so it's easier to paint like to take a Kamala. Like I said, Kamala is gonna get attacked every which mother effing way, right? Because then they're able to do that with her. Be like, oh, you see, she gets to be like a Black woman, but here she is there. That's why they're like, oh, look at her. Look at her showing you all who she dated. They're showing you all her outfits. They're trying to do all of these different kinds of things because there's a way to like, they're trying to create animosity, right? And like all of it, if you look at it, it's all steeped in the idea that they're making her like deceitful. What it basically, all the different attacks are basically on fake. You know what I mean? Like, right? And like that's what it is. It's this idea that like, oh, the immigrant is a fake who's trying to take from you. You know what I mean? This light skin, they're all trying to take from you. So it immediately makes you see her.
For me is like, this wouldn't be happening if she wasn't viewed as a Black woman. It's like that's what the irony of all of it is. All these attacks would not be happening from all those different angles if she was not seen as the intersectional person that she is. Does not include the fact that she still benefits from certain things and has privileges in a lot of different ways, and that she has there's valid critiques about her. But it's like you're doing the thing that they do to Black women, where you're completely derailing over here to attack her in all these different ways.
I think it's also interesting in the sense of like, if like it's they're saying that she is like I don't know. I think it's all the language, how it's mixed together. It's like hotties for Harris or white women for Harris, and a lot of like if you look at how people are talking about that, like they're like, oh, the white women are talking about how pretty she is and how articulate she is, and I think there is this side of it where the right is trying to call out her racial background in order to say like she's fake. But I think the next thing past that is like, it's almost like the right wants, when they criticize Kamala in this way, they want people to trust them in how they police Blackness. And that in turn says like, she can't help you because she's going to betray you down the line because she ain't really Black, but we can help you. We can make America great again. And so I think it's almost like the initial step is like plant this idea that she's manipulative. Because I'm like, think about all the like the podcast bros and all them. They're gonna follow that shit and like preach it. And then the next step is like, oh, maybe the right or the capitalists or the conservatives can really help us. And so it's almost like, I mean, if you're looking at like a tactic of they're trying to like discredit her image by making her deceitful and then telling her base to what y'all are saying, like, you can't really trust her because she can't really pick a side. It's so obvious to us. And I think that, it's just...
It might backfire though. And I think it will. Let me just say, I think it's going to backfire. And I will say Kamala is doing far better than I ever, if anybody had told me prior to her announcing, like, but prior to this happening, to Joe Biden dropping out, if anybody had told me Kamala had been was going to be the nominee running, I would have never thought it would be going as well as it's going for her, right? So let me just say that. And I do think her team, like, and I'm not saying this in terms of, because people don't fucking understand the difference. This is a comment on strategy and reality. This has nothing to do with a personal endorsement. You know what I mean? Just in terms of how she's doing her campaign, they're doing it well. You know what I mean? They're making they've made a lot of good like steps, right? I also think to Kamala, why I think it might backfire on her. I think there's so much bullshit. There's just so much bullshit, like so much disingenuous, like fucked up bullshit that it really doesn't get you around. Like you don't have the time. No one gets to a valid critique. Like when I think of like how the prosecutor discussion has been going on Kamala, right? And this is something, you know, I realize, because obviously like on the left is, oh, she's a cop, she's a prosecutor, da, 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 right? Like obviously I'm a public defender, a former public defender, an abolitionist type. So y'all know where I stand on belief system to some degree. But I will say this. To Kamala's credit, it's like the right is going out of their way to like try to paint her like they don't even know what to do anymore, because originally what they want to do is like paint her as soft on crime. Then they realize that like, oh, tough on crime.
She's smart on crime.
Is
Have you
more
read her
negative.
book? She's smart on crime.
But those two competing, the narratives don't make sense. You have to pick a side. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't make sense. Like they're trying to paint her as two different things, both of which are not accurate, you know what I mean, or true or fair in the discussion, and then it makes the whole discussion so stupid, you know what I mean, and like superfluous. I don't think it goes anywhere. And I think I was talking to Garrison about this earlier. Garrison, if you're here, we can't see you, so refresh. But I was talking to Garrison about this earlier when I was explaining, because we were talking about how I feel about the prosecutor thing, and I'm gonna make sure I say this. When I was in law school, I know a lot of prosecutors. I went to a prosecutor mill. I know, and I have friends who are prosecutors, like, and when you ask a lot of people I went to school with why they become a prosecutor and ask me why I become a public defender, a lot of us have the same answer right up until a fork in the road, right? So I want to be clear that when I don't think that every Black person who's a prosecutor, everybody who is a prosecutor is a op by their own choice in their soul. Like I'm not that they wake up and they decide they're against the Black community or something. Me and a person who is a Black prosecutor have a disagreement on what we think is the best way to pursue that. You know what I mean? But that does not mean that I think if I say like, oh, I don't love that a Kamala was a prosecutor, or I don't love the idea that a bunch of people will be inspired to be prosecutors, that doesn't mean an indictment on Kamala's character, on Kamala's commitment to Black people. It doesn't mean that I'm saying that everything Kamala did was to hurt Black people or is bad or anything like that. And I don't think that kind of conversation is what people are having, or like I said, even that kind of honest conversation. What I'm coming from is I personally want to see us in a world where I think we divest from mass incarceration in the prison industrial complex. I want to see more Black people be inspired to be organizers or to do other things, or to not, because I just don't believe that we will, based on my lived experience, that you're going to change the system from the inside. I think people who choose to be progressive prosecutors have a massive uphill battle, because the system is against them. Their own system does not. What a progressive prosecutor by virtue has to do is to fight against even their own offices and the own mandates of these people in the system. And that is very difficult, and that is a hard road. And I know people who try to do it. So it's not an indictment of her. And I want to be clear, because I think that is how like the conversation I see from the left is just like, oh, she's a cop, oh, she's a this. And it's just that's not what you know what I mean? Like there are lots of Black people who've come before me, you know what I mean? And even now who pursue things differently, you know what I mean? They're navigating their own different waters and how they do it. And we have disagreements as to what I think is the road or how effective that I think it is. And there's something that I don't care to like. I don't like the conversation when I see people be like, we need this because law and order and this is good versus the criminal and da-da-da-da-da. I don't like these particular kinds of narratives, but that's not an indictment on Kamala's Blackness or a commitment to the Black community or anything. I just think in general, something I'm exploring, I think a good book people should read is Locking Up Our Own: Crime and Punishment in Black America by James Foreman. I think in general, I just want Black people to move away from this belief in like toughen crime and police and prosecutors in the criminal system. And I'm always skeptical of us like anything else that I think is going to add another block to that. But that's not an indictment on Kamala's moral character. I think that's the most nuanced way I could put it for me, and I don't see it out there. So I just wanted to say that before I give it back to the floor.
I think that's fair. Can I say a couple things? Yes, so I want to go back a couple points. The conversation around Kamala Harris's race is not to persuade people to support Republicans.
Yeah.
In 2020, There was lots of reporting about this. And even going back to 2016, the Republicans have been running a dissuasion campaign against Black Americans. They literally have Cambridge Analytica, they have tens of millions of people's data, and tens of millions of Black people are marked as dissuadable voters. So they don't even try to say Kamala Harris is Black, so vote for us. They just want you to stay a Black ass at home.
Exactly.
And so what kind of encourages me about this conversation is, number one, none of this is new. This is already baked into the cake. They tried all this stuff already. And a lot of this was coming from the left and it was coming from the right. She was getting from all angles. And people say, yeah, I'm going to get my checks and pearls when she became the vice presidential nominee. And now that she is officially the presidential nominee, she secured the votes through a virtual roll call. So she's now officially the Democratic nominee for president. So she's already made history. You know, Shirley Chisholm tried it, and now we finally got a Black woman. And so I'm excited about that today in particular. But the whole point is that what encourages me about it is you can't put the genie back in the bottle. All right. A lot of the energy is out now. Maybe the energy might change depending on who she picks VP, and people will find something to be mad about or whatever situation may be. But in terms of what the energy and the momentum is around having a historic candidate, reinvigorating the race, and having a much different outlook from a vast majority of the electorate. Not everybody, I'm not saying everybody is, but from a vast majority of the electorate has a much more optimistic and different view with Kamala Harris being a candidate. Part of that is because she's a Black woman. Part of it is just because she's not an old ass white man. So either way, if this is all that they got, is that they're going to just try to spend the next 90 something days litigating and trying to relitigate her racial identity, I'll take that, because that's not going to be what's going to move the needle as much as they think it is in 2024 when we know what's at stake. And then the other thing I'll say about her prosecutor record is, I think that there's always valid critiques that you can make of anybody as long as they're fact-based. And as a person who has studied her record, I'm not just saying that I've looked at the articles that have been written about her. I've literally looked at her DA archive versions of it. I've literally read the reports from the Attorney General's office. I've done original research, hundreds of hours of research on it. And a vast majority of what people say about her record, the issues that they have with it, aren't actually fact-based at all. That's part of the problem. And then number two, they're completely dismissive of all of these things that she tried to do, and they're dismissive of the context that we were living in. I grew up in California, so I know I was there when they passed Proposition 187. I know how when they passed the 3 strikes law. I know how many times they were against decriminalizing marijuana. This idea that California is some liberal bastion, or even San Francisco was
untrue.
That's just not true.
California is actually has like the large. California has like one of the largest prison systems. They're actually like decided to like this example for like America's policy choice to decide on mass incarceration. Like they made 1 million prisons like over the course of a night. You know, they have some of the worst like solitary confinement practices in the country. Like most of like when you see prisoners doing strikes and having to do all their organizing, like you're seeing it happen in California. California is actually a nightmare. If California and New York are both places that are nightmares in terms of the criminal system, that are painted as these progressive liberal utopias, and it's just not true.
Can I just add one more point though, because I just want to add one more thing, because to your point earlier about how progressive prosecutors are fighting against their system, one of the things I've watched dozens of her AG announcements, her press conferences. And one of the things that always struck me in those press conferences is every time people got up there and they talked about, this has been in the work for years. This has been in the work for months. We do not have a system, whether it's, you could talk about the justice system, you could talk about the legislative system. There is no system in America that is designed for anything more than incremental, slow change. We do not have a system that is designed for radical overhaul. The most radical we got is the fact that Donald Trump got 3 Supreme Court justices and they like, it. What are we going to do? Whatever y'all want, abortion, gone. Affirmative action, gone. Who knows what the hell they'll be up to next? So that's the most radical that this country has been in terms of rapid, drastic change and rolling back of rights that we've won after 50 years. And so what people don't understand is you can have a wish list, But that wish list, ticking those things off, is not something somebody can do with the wave of a magic wand, no matter how genuine and how sincere they are, or no matter how revolutionary they are. Things take time, and you don't get 100% of what you want.
And I think that is more like, for me, like, I guess the nuance on my position on a Kamala presidency that I don't see in the discourse, right? Like, for me, I actually was watching your video today, actually this morning, Prince, when I was thinking about this. It was like within the first 2 minutes, and you're talking about, why are so many progressives running behind this? Like, this is going to be what creates so much change or whatever. For me, I think that is what I like want to caution to people, right? Like, I think change is created by the people. And I don't mean that in like an ideological, philosophical way. I mean that in an actual, like, tangible, real world, like, organizers way. What happens is all these groups, organizers on the ground, they're the ones that are doing all, they write laws, they try and like lobby around them, and they eventually find like a legislator who is willing to, they can have an ear, a sympathetic ear to them, and get them to co-sign that. That's why you see, like, in California, like I think of like the Unlock the Box campaign to try, they did the End Solitary Confinement Act, and they had Cori Bush sponsor that, right? So I think, obviously, the reason why, when I tell people like, oh, the Democrats, I prefer the Democrats or the Republicans in power, why you want to pick your weakest adversary, is because the reality is, in my like real life, when you get the Pretrial Fairness Act in Illinois or bail reform in New York City, it's happening because organizers and the people are able to go and communicate to Democrats and those politicians who are willing to hear us out and support the actual legislation. And that's how we're getting the change. And I know this. I talk to the politicians, I do it. And I know, and I've never been on the phone with a Republican, because that's not possible. It's a brick wall. They're not hearing anything. So, period. That's why my perspective has been and will continue to be that it's better for us to have Kamala than Donald Trump in them or whatever, right? That being said, what I want people to not do, you know what I mean? Even for their own selves, not even just because for me, just so people don't find themselves disappointed, is people do this thing where they act like, if you're telling them you should do this, or that it's in their best interest, or that they vote for them, what you're telling them is that by voting for them, that person is going to do all the things. That person is going to be the person that creates the change. That person is going to give you the revolution. That person is going to give you that. No, they're not. And also, that's not what I'm telling you. And it's not what they're promising you. And I just want us to be clear here, because I don't want you to interpret like, please stop interpreting progressives or the organizers or the people who are trying to create change or who support you in the work that you're doing and the vision that we want. Please stop interpreting us saying that this is to our best interest of in this current dynamic to do this as me telling you that this person is a reflection of me and my ideals, that this person is going to create the change, or that's what's going to happen, because you're going to be upset. Not only are you going to be upset and disappointed, but you're also not going to do the work because you've missed the part of the message that I'm trying to tell you, is that it's us who have to do it, right? So I just want to be clear about that. There are a lot of people, and have it, enjoy yourself. Don't let me stop you. But there are a lot of people carried on like what I'm telling you. They're like, oh, this gonna be, you know what I mean? I'm like, whoa. Because then, you know what I mean? And then what happens is, when you have that mindset that this person, like what anyone is promising you is that this person is going to create revolutionary change for you or whatever have you, like, my Lord, you know what I mean? Like, even what they will do will not be given any credit. You know what I mean? And if that's the idea that you have, if you're expecting the Black woman, because she's a Black woman or whatever you've told yourself, to mean she's going to come in and give you a progressive Black woman's dream, like what you think the world for Black women, then like, you are going to be evaluating them on this insane metric. Meanwhile, look at what the opposition is. And I think that's something America always does, because even in the conversations we are having about, like, even when it was still Joe Biden, I'm like, Jesus Christ, it's crazy how, like, Republicans, there is no bar. There's no expectation that we have for Republicans. Or the right is actually crazy. Like, Republicans can literally be planning coups, you know what I mean? Like in and out of impeachments, you know, in and out of criminal court. They could be in front of you like immigrants, gay people, let's kill everybody. We gonna do this. We gonna give the police all of the immunity. We gonna get them. We gonna make it legal for you to roll them over. Like, that's real. Like, that, these aren't even hyperbolic things. Like, I'm not even being hyperbolic.
They're literally saying it.
And like, the fact to me, like I said, it says something to me about where we're at and what we think is normal for the other side. But like, we don't even mention that, and we're like, Jesus Christ, Joe Biden is an old nigga answering them questions like old nigga. Like, the fact that, let me just like slid past like the extremism and the craziness for the right is scary. You know what I mean? Because then like we have this idea that it's like we hold we evaluate all of the work that we do, not just based. I'm not just talking about the Democrats. I mean even about ourselves. We evaluate our movements negatively. We act like everything is a failure. We consider BLM a failure, defunding a failure. If everything is not overnight, we don't give ourselves credit for anything. Like anything. We evaluate everything, all our actors, all our movements, all our work, all our discourse, all our legislation in the light like least favorable to us. We analyze everything in a way that disenchants us. I've noticed this consistently from like 2 seconds after. Like, it's no reason why people carry on like Black Lives Matter is done or defund the police was a fail or we haven't gotten anywhere. I'm like, this shit happened 4 years ago. And do you see how we've changed the discourse? You see all the different things we've done. Look at all the different kinds of, I'm like, we got the Pretrial Fairness Act in Illinois. We've gotten rid of cash bail in places. We've done all kinds of amazing things. But because we insist on like analyzing ourselves, like all of our things in this light, we never see progress. And then we get disenchanted and we don't move and we criticize ourselves and we allow this other extremist side to just be momentum. You know what I mean? And I just want to caution us on that. Prince, I see your face.
I think I want to push back.
Go,
I agree in a lot of ways, but I think for me as an abolitionist, it's really hard to have, or we can all say it was really hard to have experienced it was really hard to experience 2020, go into my city, get beaten up by police. One girl here in Ohio died after being exposed to tear gas. So many amazing, subversive, intense demands along this long list of what abolition should be. And now 4 years later, we're being encouraged to vote for a Black Asian woman who's a prosecutor. And so I think if you even just look at it optically, there's something weird there for me where I'm kind of and so that can exist. But I also think the other thing is like what I really fear is that I think about the James Baldwin quote where he says like a cop is a cop no matter who they are. Like they might be a nice guy, but all I know is that they have a gun. I don't have the time to find out. And so that's how I feel about Kamala, because I'm like, and I do respect what you're saying, Reese, in terms of like, I think a lot of people like, she's a cop, she's a prosecutor. So, because even for me, from researching her more, I do see over the years, like she's had certain policies and there's been certain headlines and she's gone back and been like, that was a mistake, or I shouldn't have done that, or like things could have gone differently. But I don't trust politicians. And I think that we're being asked to trust these people. And there's this, I mean, but I think on some level, like that's the language around like why some people are saying like voting for her is harm reduction, where it's like, so I'm supposed to trust this person to lead this next era of what like a better version of America.
You're not being asked. I don't think you are being asked that. And
I think it's a lot of the language and the guilt that comes around how some people are speaking about voting for Kamala. I'm not saying that that's in this conversation, but I do think like, I don't see how voting for her and waiting for whatever her version of America is helping us get.
But no one's asking you to do that. And I think that's the exact opposite of everything I just said. And like, I think we talk a lot as Black people, like I think, and this has been a discussion my entire Black life, of like symbolic wins, how we feel about symbolic wins. Yeah. And I think something I want to introduce to the like, and we've always talked about the harm of symbolic wins, symbolic things, Black History Month or Obama and all these. I think I want to talk about the harm of symbolic losses. You know what I mean? I think that's where I'm at now. Who gives a in terms of our actual progress as a movement and where abolition has come and what we are actually doing, like the idea that like, oh, you're being asked to vote for Kamala as a cop and Kamala. So who gives a shit? In the last 4 years, we eliminated cash bail in Illinois altogether. We passed historic bail reform in New York City. We have done that. We introduced the End Solitary Confinement Act in California. We have been doing shit like that all over the country. We are experiencing all kinds of wins. Who gives a fuck about this symbolic loss of like you're being asked to vote for a cop?
I think it matters. I think it matters if people are actually angry about what she's done, what she represents. And
but are they actually saying what they're angry about? I haven't heard one discussion, not even from my own educated friends and people, point out what, other than just saying she is a prosecutor. You know what I mean? Like they're not saying what the they're mad about or anything like
policy to have parents get locked up if their kids didn't go to school. She passed a book called Smart on Crime, where she's parroting progressive language, but still doing fear mongering about crime in communities and saying that policing is necessary because of that, while also passing more reformist things in the background. I think that contradiction should be articulated, and I don't think I don't think we totally disagree with each other, but I think there is a contradiction in how Democrats can use more progressive language, and then we have to wait to see if they actually perform their like progressive bit in office. And I think with electoralism, what I struggle with is I don't think people are willing to fight enough to push her. And I don't think that's the inherent truth, but that is my fear and my personal difficulty with like,
I don't think the change we're going to get, especially when it comes to policing, like policing in the criminal system, the factual matter is most of what happens in policing in the criminal system in America does not happen on a federal level. It's not happening on a federal level in the first place. There is very little that's happening in terms of our fight in abolition and criminal justice that happens in the federal level. So there's no reason why we have this focus on the presidential election when it comes to that. I am not, and I don't think anybody is like promising that Kamala is going to be. I think you're right. I want to say this, like, the Democrats are not pro-abolition. The Democrats are not pro-abolition. The Democrats are not pro-dismantle the criminal system. They are not pro even massively reform the criminal system. Nobody. And I'm at least I am not arguing that. And I'm not sure. I don't think anybody else on the call is. But I think that's not what they're promising, and that's not what we're going to get. And I think that's fair if we want to critique that. We're not going to get that from them. What all I am saying is, in terms of the only people that are pro-abolition, that are pro getting rid of the criminal system, that are pro these things, are the organizers on the ground, are the organizers and the people, and they don't have a chance in hell at being able to pass shit or get through to what kind of control and power. If there's another Donald Trump administration, what will happen on the Supreme Court? What will happen on all of the different courts throughout the nation that he can appoint? What will happen in terms of the other Republicans will be the rise of this. There will be a brick wall between us and progressive legislation and things that we want to do. So no, I am not saying I have criticized. You could find it, a laundry list of criticisms of the Democrats and their support of policing. Joe Biden Joe Biden wanted more police, put more money into policing. I have said that I believe that Kamala will just be a more competent version of this administration. All these different things. I think you're absolutely right. I just think in actuality, in the meaningful way that it really, really matters, they don't matter, and that doesn't matter to what we're doing. And we keep having that conversation to me instead of the reality is the real progressive shit that we want to do, the actual divesting from the criminal system, the initiatives that do that, like I say, like getting rid of cash bail, all these different things. We can't do that with a Republican stalemate.
Can I just correct though? You talked about truancy. Truancy had been a prosecutable offense in California since 1977. That was not a concept that Kamala Harris created. She never prosecuted parents of truant children. The law that she helped usher in actually resulted in the most punitive jurisdictions, people who had prosecuted 500 cases in the years preceding the law, actually dropping down to 3 cases over the course of 6 years. And so what she actually did around truancy was not to be more punitive. It was actually to tackle the root cause and get more resources for parents and for students. And it was actually Governor Jerry Brown that vetoed 3 of the initiatives that she tried to get ushered in to get even more resources. So a lot of the conversation around truancy is, I understand the discomfort with some of the language. That was 20 years ago. People didn't talk in the same progressive language that we talk about now. But if you look in terms of the policy, we can talk about, Olay, you've mentioned multiple times now, getting rid of cash bail. That was one of her bills that she introduced and on a bipartisan way, got Rand Paul to support it, was to end cash bail at the federal level when she became senator. Part of her work, what she was trying to do was to make it so that public defenders were equally as funded as prosecutors. There are so many things that she did around women in incarceration. There were so many things that she's done for criminal justice that don't even get talked about. A lot of this progressive wish list outside of abolition, she's not an abolitionist.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie to you, but Kamala gonna get in there and people not gonna get locked up. People gonna get locked up. She locked motherfuckers up. She prosecuted people. She was in a room, the prosecution room, locking motherfuckers up because she was prosecuting people for child rape and molestation, in some cases murder. So I'm not gonna sit up here and lie and act like, well, Kamala ain't for people getting locked up. If you did the crime, she gonna have your ass locked up. Now, if that's something that's a red line, I respect that. That's a red line. There's no abolitionist candidate on the ticket on either party, but I still respect people's red lines. I'm not want to argue with nobody about their red lines. But when I look at, this is why Olay, and I said this last time I was on your show, let's talk specific policies, because when we talk specific policies, on average, the wish list that people have, she's addressing it, or she has a position on it. And it's not me take my word for it. I can point to a specific piece of Senate legislation. I can point to a specific hearing where she's testified in. I can point to work that she's doing as vice president. I can point to reports that have nothing to do with anything that she said, but just reporting on her efforts. So I think there's a difference between talking about in theory what we're going to get and talking about specifics. And the last thing I'll say is making Kamala Harris the face of disillusionment and disgruntled attitudes about the lack of progressive progress, when we have, as I mentioned on your show before, like 500,000 elected officials in this country. 500,000. We have 23 states with Republican trifectas. We have one glaring example was what this administration tried to do around lead water, or our water infrastructure. Tate Reeves, the governor, and Clay has talked about this many times, who came up with Confederate Heritage Month,
every April,
was sitting up there blocking money from the federal government to the city of Jackson, Mississippi. So they were boiling hot water when there had been hundreds of millions of dollars, or tens of millions, or whatever the number was, that was trying to go there. So all I ask is that if we're going to talk about policy, let's get specific. If we're going to talk about the record, let's get specific. Maybe it's right, maybe it's wrong. I personally had a problem with some of the way that Kamala responded about the critiques against her, because I was like, actually, that ain't right. You're apologizing for some shit that didn't even happen. But, that's me being nitpicky. I think her team sometimes thought it was easier to just say sorry and move on.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with a lot of what you're saying, but didn't she literally, advocate for those policies? To me, I'm like, was that fabricated, or
No, what policies specifically?
The truancy policies that made parents culpable if their kids didn't go to school.
No, the truancy had always been against the law since 1977. When she was a prosecutor, and talking about San Francisco prosecutor, she did advocate in terms of, let's use this law as a way to force people whose kids are missing 20, 30, 40 days, or however, whatever the percentage is of school. And so she did use the law, because as the prosecutor, that's all you have. She wasn't, the mayor or something like that. So she had the powers within her prosecution office, and her tactics. Okay, yeah, I can understand why somebody says, I don't like that she sent a letter saying, if kids don't go to school, you're going to go to jail. I can understand that somebody don't like that. But the bottom line is the kids got at school. Nobody went to jail. So we can quibble with tactics.
I think that's the part that I have a problem with, because I'm like, if we support abolition, we shouldn't be supporting criminalization.
I understand that. Right. And like I said, if that's your red line
for me.
That's fine, but I'm just saying that's different to say she shouldn't have sent a letter this way. She shouldn't have talked in this way. That's a different critique versus saying she locked up parents for truancy, or that's a different critique than saying because of her, people were locked up for truancy, when neither of those particular statements are true. It's true that she sent letters. It's true that she said stuff, and maybe people don't like how she said it.
I'm gonna put it to y'all. I'm gonna put it to y'all this way. This is exactly me. Prince and Reese is like, I'm right in between y'all on exactly why this is what I said, why I ultimately don't like the idea of more people being inspired to be prosecutors, because of what Reese is talking about right now. The actual just reality of the system that you work in, you know what I mean, will have you having to do or say or operate in a way that maybe it's not, you know what I mean, does not, express your ideals or what you want, or my progressive ideals. I will, and to this is what I'm going to say with what they can do. I like the DC crime bill. That's what I call it. What Muriel Bowser in DC passed earlier this year, right? I criticized that all over public social media. And when the politicians, when some of the lawmakers who were writing the law reached out to me to talk to me, I let them have it and explain to them exactly why every provision I think is this, why I'm saying what I'm saying publicly about it, what I think is wrong with it, and what have you, whatever. And they made some tweaks. Still a up law, still a DC crime bill, still calling it that, still opposing it. But it's still worthwhile for what you can accomplish. If I can make it, my attitude wouldn't have been, when they called me, my attitude wasn't, oh, now I'm not going to speak to y'all because y'all. You know what I mean? Because, like, you know what I mean? I'm not even going to try to get you to do something a little bit better. You know what I mean? I'm still against you. You're still off. I'm still calling this DC crime bill, but I'm going to try my best to, with the tools that I have, try to at least get a little bit of something or whatever it is that we have. So I feel a lot of like what you feel, Prince. You know, like I said, I don't want us to be, I don't like prosecutors, you know, or all these different things. I understand it.
And I agree with you on the federal level.
Can I just add really quick? I do want more prosecutors, and I'll tell you why. I used to feel I do want more prosecutors, and I used to feel exactly the way that y'all feel. About 3 years ago, I began doing a show on my SiriusXM show called Exonerated, and I've been interviewing people who've been wrongfully convicted, and nearly every single person where their case was finally overturned, it was because a progressive prosecutor, oftentimes a black prosecutor, sometimes even a white dude like Larry Krasner in Philadelphia, got into office and fought for justice. I don't like the idea of none of us being in that space. And literally the exonerees that I've spoken to, 30, 40 years behind bars, they said, thank God for this prosecutor that came in Wayne County in Michigan, in Chicago, in Philly, in Cali. So when I had that experience and them in tears on the phone saying, I hope more people vote, I can recall when this guy, Jimmy Dennis, 25 years in death row in Philadelphia, he said, when Trump got into office, my lawyers went into overtime doing he was the president-elect, did everything we could to try to get me in front of other judges because we knew it was a wrap when Trump got into office. So the exonerees that I've spoken to, they have totally reinvented my perspective on prosecutors. And lastly, I'll add, I feel everything that you're saying, Prince. I get it. I understand where you're coming from. I think for me, I'm a black man. I'm a black gay man. My community is disproportionately impacted by HIV. I saw healthcare get shut down all throughout the South. I saw nonprofits get shut down due to the previous administration. With my intersections, and I respect what you're saying completely, my very right to exist and my community's right to exist could be damn near non-existent. I have friends who live in Georgia who are considering moving out of Georgia because of their right to exist. So
but the state has always tried to kill us. So
of course it has, but listen,
we have to protect ourselves regardless. And I'm also of the same identity pockets that you mentioned. But
I get that. But literally, the threat that my community saw under Bush, under Trump, there was a distinct difference under Obama. And this is just my experience. Yours could be different. There was a distinct difference under Obama and Biden. My number one issue is healthcare. That is always my number one issue. And so that's another lens that I see it as well. But I'm sorry, I just wanted to add a thing about what I learned from the exonerees around prosecutors.
Oh, you. But can I just one last thing? I'm sorry. I'll say this real quick. I don't think that anybody's asking anybody to emulate the language of 2004. But then to also say a person who has evolved in terms of their language and the common language they would use now, that now it's disingenuous, or why should I trust you? The same reason why you trust anybody who has evolved over the past 20 something years and who has evidence of their evolving and who still has the policies that, or there's a consistent thread of the policy. So I just want to point, nobody is saying that anybody should go and look at old Kamala Harris speeches from 2004 and be like, yeah, let's go talk about locking up parents of truancy. But then also, like, let's recognize the way that she talks is drastically different. Even there, I don't think her policies are drastically different, because I don't think they were never as bad as people put it out there to be. They were always progressive, but I don't think you can say we don't want people to imitate that language, but then also she changed her language so she's full of shit. I just think that's a disconnect. But I'm sorry.
I don't know. I've been listening because I feel like I'm in the middle. I'm trying to figure out how to.
I'm in the middle too.
I'm very much like smack dab. Like, I wasn't feeling no type of hope with Biden being the candidate, and I did feel sue me. And she could. A little bit. A little bit of hope. When, he dropped out, I was like, oh shit. Like, this really kind of like affected the election. Whatever happens, that moment really is something historic. And I saw people engage again, which I think is the perfect time, regardless of how you feel. You could not vote for her, you could vote for her, but people engaged again. And that momentum is super important to get people to do the organizing that, Olay is talking about, whether they, again, vote for her or not. I think everybody on this panel isn't saying. I think I don't want to not educated in the way of like, to be like academic elitism, but just the reality that right now the critical thinking skills in America are like disastrously low. I think among certain groups, everything that we're saying is like, yeah, no one's saying that. But talking to other people who might not know, like I've learned some things on this line. I'm educated as hell, but I learned some things on this call alone. I think a vast majority of people are not. And they're using that very like snippet of language that we all are talking about to get people to like be on one side very quickly. And that is, that's part of like political strategy. We only have a couple months till the election, which is why it was really fucking annoying that Biden didn't drop out before, because we could have maybe had more time to kind of combat the things about Kamala Harris's record. So I think like again, I'm in the middle too, and I am leaning more towards like actually voting for her. But
I can't even vote.
That's a whole other thing. I'll show you tweets on that. I think the balance that I'm struggling to find, and I'm realizing for the first time that I think is we have been really critical on what change happens. And who told us to be critical on how we have progressive change and critical of ourselves? White supremacy told us to be critical on ourselves, number one. Number two, I do think sometimes there are people who are like, oh, don't have any type of critique, because if you critique her in an ounce because she's a Black woman, blah, 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 and what we're seeing, it'll just deter people right away and they won't interrogate further. I think the language of how we critique is what kind of needs to be the shift. And it could be what I'm really happy that I'm seeing more of that I haven't really seen in other elections. And granted, I'll be 29, so there's only been a few elections I've been able to vote in. But I remember when Obama first got elected, is that people are finally being like, you know what, I can vote for Kamala, and I'm going to push on this, and I'm going to push on this, and I'm not voting because I align with her. I'm voting for the environment that I want to work in. And that type of language, I think, being championed among whether you're liberal, leftist, progressive, is what's really been exciting for me. And realizing that we're all coming from a position of where we feel is the best. What I haven't liked is people thinking that how you feel about this election is like that's your moral superiority. We're all victims of the same system.
Everything is being treated as self-expression.
Like if you think that anyone here is trying and a big ugly boogie bad guy, like let's be serious. People are doing what they think is the best and what they have the tools and what they have the resources to do. Some people might have the tools and capacity and resources to be a prosecutor. I don't have to be that. Some people might have the tools and resources to be full-on abolitionists. Then they can do that. The judgment of kind of like what you feel like you can do, as long as you're not like it. There's a difference. I'll end on this. I know we like to bring up Harriet, and Harriet had to leave people behind and shit. But there is a distinct difference in having to leave people behind because they are actively like against your livelihood and perpetuating these things that are against their own livelihood to try to weaponize a semblance of power over other people, and people just ignorant, and they need to be talked to, and they need to have a little bit of hope. And if you can't differentiate between those two groups, then I think there's some faultiness in that as well. And that I think is what's being highlighted in her being like the nominee now.
Yeah, it is frustrating. Like there really isn't any nuance. Like I had tweeted this. I feel like Kamala, when the minute Kamala became the nominee, everybody acted like black men and women were signed up for the campaign. Real, you know what I mean? And if you are not like jumping up high enough, like you're in trouble. You know what I mean? And if you even like just for me personally, I haven't even felt like I've been critiquing Kamala. I don't feel like I've even offered a Kamala critique this whole time. I don't think I've gotten an opportunity to the discourse because I've just been trying to talk about what Kamala's up against, and people are perceiving you even talking about what she's gonna deal with in the race as negativity, as a critique of her. And it's like, I'm not even critiquing her. I'm not even getting around to that yet. I'm talking about just like the landscape, right? And I guess the only last thing I want to say is something like what Clay was saying about prosecutors. This is the thing. This is the thing. Very few, like there are very few like exonerated people, and there are very few even like when you think about like divisions at prosecutors' offices to handle it. You know what I mean? To handle, because they don't want to. That's like when you think about it, that's an error on their part. That's not something they want to do. And what often happens, right? Like something I experience a lot, especially when I worked in Brooklyn, is you get in the criminal court and the court officers are black and the judge is black and the prosecutor is black and the defendant is black and you're black and everybody, all the other people don't give a like I remember this one time. This black man, an old black man, had a seizure. Like he was the defendant. He had a seizure and he fell. They let his head like hit the ground. And I watched the black court officers, the black prosecutor, and the black judge not give a like go to shackle a seizing black man. And something like I very often, when I get into court, and I know every black public defender I know feels like this, the last thing I want to see is a black prosecutor or a black judge. Like that, the last thing I want to see. Very often, they are not our allies. I cannot even think of one in my entire practice. Can't even think of one black prosecutor I've been like, yeah, that's a good one. Or a judge, not once, not never. In fact, I've had like, that's actually the opposite experience that I tend to have. And so, and the reason for that is, it's not that they all signed up to like, in their world, they all began anti-blackness, like to what I was saying earlier about law schools and how you're educated to be a part of their systems. They educate you out of progressiveness. You know what I mean? Like I said, I went to a prosecutor mill. They try to fight you from this direction. They teach you to believe in the system. They teach you to perceive, people this way. They teach you to perceive it. So eventually you don't even realize it's like a running joke amongst public defenders that the most like tough on crime, worst judges are former public defenders. You know what I mean? And like black people talk about how often black people in the system, we know it, James Baldwin to Prince talking about it earlier, how black cops be the worst. You know what I mean? They feel like they have to show out and do the worst in the system.
Even more sometimes. You're
exactly.
Like,
me and my boyfriend always laugh. My little sister is she works for a college and she be there dashing dreams, child. Like she run the money, like man's the money. And me and my little, like every time she call, like me and my boyfriend start our progressive people shit. She be like, I got a job. I'm getting promoted. I'm doing this. And we always talk about like, that's what the system, like with the whole function of a systemic problem, the system teaches you to feel like, especially when the system is against you, a white supremacist system teaches black and marginalized people that we have to overcompensate. We have to do even more to ascend in those systems. So very often we turn into the worst up. So I'm always worried. That's why I was saying why I worry about a world where Kamala, I worry about the effects of people feeling inspired to go down this route, because what they're educated on that route, how they're taught, they don't often become. Like you run into you get those good like black ones who do great things. They're always gonna be them, but they be in the minority. And the like school you gotta go to even be that. Like when I think about me as a public defender, I've always said this: I'm not representative of your average public defender. And I feel like the rise of public defenders like me on social media in the last like 4 or 5 years has led to public defenders maybe getting a little bit of a better, but like spin. I think we've always had a worse spin than is deserved, because I think the system intentionally wants people to, instead of vilifying the legislators and the prosecutors and the judges making the choices, they make you hate the attorney. That being said, I still think the average public defender isn't all as progressive as me or for the clients or whatever. I think actually, like in my class at Legal Aid, we were actually the result of them feeling like that, getting criticism for it not being that. Like I remember Legal Aid, y'all don't know this because this is a world of public defender shit. Legal Aid is the biggest, oldest public defense organization in the country, but Bronx Defender Services started giving us a run for our money in their progressive stuff. They took this holistic approach and they started becoming the face of like progressive public defense, and Legal Aid didn't like that shit. So my year they went and they hadn't hired like a black public defender. They had a whole class of people like me and my friend and Shaman, like this mad black public public defenders in my class, and we're all like this, and they couldn't stand us at the organization. You know what I mean? Like, you just like, everybody's like, I remember when I got to my offices and like these older public defenders were pissed the off that we had to like reconsider the collateral consequences of your client's case. Like, my class of attorneys was educated to like not do something that would up your client's immigration case if they're an immigrant or their immigrant status. The older public defenders were pissed. I remember one of my first favorite clients was I got him. I had actually been covering for this old white lady. I'd been covering her case. The client had like 6 cases, and I ended up like, he asked me to sit down. I was just supposed to call his case and adjourn it, and he asked me to talk to him right quick. So I sat outside and talked to him, and I realized he was going through a bunch of shit. And so then I was like, let me take these cases. So I asked her like, hey, can I get these cases? Of course. Let her give up 6 cases. She was like, yeah, take them. But then, so that was like Friday, and like, it wasn't, so on the weekend I'm working on the case. I go and I request like social work services for him, but she was like still on the case in the system. She sent me an email cursing me the out about how dare I be getting social work for these guilty clients, and I'm gonna learn on how I and that's what a lot of them will feel. So I say this to say, you'll be shocked by how very much the system on both sides is pro, this way. So I'm always worried. Like, I'd be scared of people hearing that, like, let me go be a prosecutor. Let's go get more prosecutors. And then they go right to these law schools that teach them to be the ops in these organizations.
Can I ask you a question though?
Yeah.
So are you saying that you don't believe any Black folks should be prosecutors?
No, I'm not saying that any Black people shouldn't be prosecutors. We have a system that exists, right? Like, we have a current system that exists. I think people do their best or whatever have you. I think they're going to be ones who go be good. But when in terms of, it's the way is it wrong for some Black people to want to be basketball players or rappers? No. Do we like that every Black person, when a bunch of people are feeling pushed to be in that direction? No, exactly. So for me, it's like, I'm not inherently saying, we shouldn't have any Black prosecutors, or we shouldn't have any Black people that try and like fight from that side or whatever. I just want to divorce this a little bit from that being our plan A. You know what I mean? From so many of us thinking that's the way, let's do it. If we have more Black cops, if we have more Black prosecutors, but we just have more Black people.
Tim Scotts. We don't want Tim Scotts and Clarence Thomases to be prosecutors and judges and cops. Absolutely. Yeah. I'm with you on that.
But can I also say, can we stop erasing that she was the second Black woman to be U.S. Senator, that she's the sitting vice president of the United States? She's running to be president. And so I think that what I believe, more people will be inspired to believe that they can grow up one day to be president or vice president or a U.S. senator, as opposed to people wanting to be a prosecutor. I think that the emphasis on her prosecution, and granted, I think it's clever that now she's leaning in because she's up against a person who has 34 felonies. I mean, if she didn't do that, I would think that would be political malpractice to not make that contrast.
I don't think she's wrong to do it, but it is like, I can show you them comments. Like, I have so many people in my comments screaming about Law and Order and how good it is that we have her, because it shows that we are actually the law and order, and he's the criminal, and this is why this is good. Like, I have people in my comments actively being like, it's good. Like, they've let go of that anti-policing stuff and and they're acting like this is a return to form. You know what I mean? So it's not a criticism of Kamala. And like I've said, I think Kamala has not been given the benefit of, Kamala does not get the benefit of actually getting to be represented or even like criticized or praised for her actual self. You know what I mean? Our actual fullness of herself, or the fullness of the record, right? So like, it's not even Kamala. I'm just talking in terms of the narratives, you know what I mean? Like, what is being fed and what those have, because those have how we brand things, how we receive things as a community has such like a major impact on how we feel and how we move. You know what I mean? Like Obama's Black excellence, you know what I mean? Obama and with that, and how we felt about that and that Black family and all those things, people still love that. There's a reason they still celebrate that. People point to these things. So it's not of her. It's not a criticism of that. It's not talking even about like saying that she hasn't done a million other things or she won't be inspired in these ways. I'm just talking about the way I know people are going to attach, how they're taking this prosecutorial Law and Order and this to mean this, and how they're contrasting that with our movements to say like, oh, see? You know what I mean? We're getting back to Law and Order. We're getting back to this. That's only my worry. Not about her. It's about the social implications, I guess.
I think that's a fair point. Yeah. But it's also, when she ran in 2019 as a progressive prosecutor with the receipts of being progressive, the progressive folks ripped her ass apart.
You're right.
So it wasn't a good political strategy to run as a reformist person, to run as a progressive person, to point out no cash bail, to point out
You're right.
all of the things that she did that were actually progressive, that weren't popular at the time,
And you're right.
and that a lot of people have co-opted. And so when we talk about completely fair point, obviously we don't want to for the purposes of our society become more carceral. We don't want to talk about more punitive things, more policing and things like that. As a political strategy for this election, she wouldn't have been able to run any other way because of the critiques against her, usually not fact-based in some cases, yes, because she's not an abolitionist. She would have never been able to run any other way. When she tried, her ass was ripped apart. And so I get it, but this is the only practical reality, because even the people that want to see the language and want to see the progressive policies would never have accepted her language, and they would not have accepted her as being the right voice for that. And the evidence is the 2019 campaign.
You're right.
Yeah.
What's Garrison thinking? Garrison? Garrison been nodding a whole lot. I'm making a lot of facial expressions.
You know, I mean, I appreciate it. I think, here's what I think. I think that Kamala Harris has a very clear, and I mentioned this last time I was on your show, Olay, that she has a very clear political change theory, which is that she believes you can change it from the inside. That's what she believes. And to be honest with you, she's been effective. It's worked. It's allowed her to get to places where she's been able to lead what I believe to be both progressive change and meaningful change in ways that we're living through the benefits of right now. And so I think I don't want to use the word critique, but my question, I think, to those who are maybe launching, trying to push her especially from the left, is that in many ways it feels like you all, or those folks who are doing that, are outside of the political process. It really feels like, if I'm, thinking about the way that Vice President Kamala Harris is, which voices she's listening to, the voices on the left almost seem as though they've ceded their vote, that they've said, I'm not voting for a person who isn't all the way to, whatever place, whether that's abolition or ceasefire to the net, all of that. And so it feels as though you've almost kind of given away the opportunity to push this very powerful political candidate, one of only two running in this country. And so I've always kind of wondered, what is the political change theory or strategy behind that particular position? And I think the other thing, we talk about harm reduction a lot, but if you look at, and I would be remiss if we don't mention Project 2025, like if you look at the plans from the people who are closest to Donald Trump, who have advised Donald Trump, who are part of his administration, those people are deeply hostile to progress around policing. They believe that the Department of Justice should never investigate police misconduct, which is how we know that Missouri and Baltimore, that's how we know about Ferguson. That's how we know about Baltimore police departments. That's how we know that these police departments have targeted. Every single time the Department of Justice studies a police department, they find that they're racist. Like, that's just how we know it. And they want to stop that from ever happening. And so it feels like with the choices before us, I really want us to kind of keep the main thing. And it feels like the choices before us are fairly clear for the ends that we wish to see achieved.
Yeah. Oh, real rap bars. I feel like we got a show. Anybody got any last words? Any final words?
Always. There's not enough time. There's not enough time.
I'll just say I invite critique on Vice President Kamala Harris, but be receptive to the response. Be receptive to the facts. I've been doing this for 5 years now, and in my experience, a lot of people have had an aha moment, like, oh, okay, so what I've heard wasn't right, or oh, okay, now that you explained that, a lot of people find a lot to get behind. I will respect everybody's red line. Clay, you and we talked about this yesterday on your show. And when people asked about Gaza, if that's your red line, that's cool. I'm not going to say vote for the black woman who cares about Gaza. If that's your red line, that's your red line. Whatever your red line is, that's fine. But if we're going to talk about critiques, then all I just ask is, let's come to the table with the specifics, and let's be receptive to the facts. Whichever way they sway, then let that be what dictates the end result and not just what we want to be committed to understanding about Kamala Harris.
Yeah, I mean, I won't add too much, but I feel like as an abolitionist, I'm like, is she going to stop cop cities, or is she going to fold to what is already politically
No, baby,
necessary
she's
for
not.
her to be
No,
less
baby, she
progressive
not.
on verbally?
She is not.
But that's what I'm saying. I'm like, in terms of my own what I see of the future, I don't trust her, and I don't trust the political elite. And I also think, for me, abolition, I believe in divestment and making changes and reform from the inside and doing that. But I also think we need to burn prisons down. That's what they did before. So I think it's like different strategies, but I get what y'all are saying.
And again, I want to be clear, baby. I agree. I understand where you're like. She's not going to be like Cop City. Like, she's not gonna come out here with me on like Eric Adams and like that. Like, they're not going, like, she's not. I'm gonna if she wins, thank God we'll have held off a Project 25, and then we'll be critiquing the shit that I don't like there. That we'll be talking shit about that. She'll make some statement about protesters are wilding out or blah blah blah. They're gonna do all the things that get on our nerves. It's going to happen, and I think it's important for me. I just want to make sure I communicate to people that thinking, first of all, do whatever everybody wants. I can't vote. I done told you I'm immigrant. I cannot vote anyway. So, you know, and do what you want with your vote. You know what I mean? I just want to be clear that to the people who like want my opinion, you want my perspective, you know what I mean? If I'm offering it to you, I think it makes the most sense to go that route than what is the other option or Donald Trump. But that doesn't mean, I'm not telling you to put your faith in her. I'm not telling you vote for her does not mean deify her. Vote for her does not mean put your faith in her. Vote for her or vote for the Democrats or something. None of that means that. I'm just telling you to pick the people that is going to be easiest for you to get an ear to. You see what I'm saying? For you to even be able to explain your perspective or how you like accomplish even a little bit of what you want. Like, that's all it is. Like, I'm not expecting any of them to align with you or say all the things or be a none of that. So I just want to be clear. I'm not nobody's cheerleader for the Democrats or Kamala or anybody, but the fuck Republicans and what Donald Trump and them are finna be on, like, just factually, what they're gonna be on. We're dealing with what they were on last time, and they haven't chilled out yet. And like,
they just got started. They was just getting they got Amy Coney Barrett in October. They was just warming up. So
and let me tell you, after we all done impeached Trump twice, charged him, took him to court, convicted. If he win, he finna show his ass. Like, like, you think he gonna let y'all get another opportunity to vote again?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. The Republicans are really they're idiots. Let's be clear. But they're so organized. One thing they ate that one little thing is these motherfuckers organized behind they hate. You've never seen nobody hate as good as this. It's really crazy.
Because you know what it is? To what Reese was saying earlier, Republicans show up. Republicans show the up. That's why their strategy is never to win us over or to get us to vote for them. Is to not show up. They just need to disenchant us because Republicans gonna be out in big numbers. You trust
Fun
that?
fact.
Like, that's all it is.
Real quick. I was in DC for like a a fellowship, Women in Congress fellowship in 2017. And I had to go visit the Republican National Committee, and I really did not want to be on that excursion, but we did. And we went, saw their headquarters, and we were able to ask them questions about the 2016 election. So we came in like, so what the what the is that? Not to mention, there was one room where all the Black people in the RNC were working, and they had ego spirituals on. I swear on my life, they were in a corner office. You walked through the only Black people in the entire headquarters building. They were there, and I swear there was some weight in the water playing. I was like, this is insane. But anyways, so we asked them their strategy for 2016. And they straight up told us, they were like, we were really tired. I'm paraphrasing and code switching. We were tired of losing. We took data, research, and all the resources the last 4 years to make sure we were not going to lose 2016 again. And whoever looked like they were going to be able to get the people to vote for them, they were going to get everything. Even if the Republicans themselves didn't like, we remember correctly, 2016, when Republicans did not like Trump. They really did not like him. But the moment they realized, damn, he's going to be able to get the popular vote, he's going to be able to get the win for us, they rallied behind him. And they cut all, people started dropping from from being a Republican candidate. And the issue was the Democrats were still, there were so many people trying to win the candidacy for being the nominee for Democrats. They thought he was so extreme that there was no way he was going to win. But the Republicans rallied behind him the moment they realized he was going to be the one that would get them the win. Yeah. And ever since then, that's what they've done.
Like, I want to remind you, when Trump first became a thing, mad Republicans didn't like him, didn't with him, like considered him, like they didn't like that. The same way people be like, oh, Democrats in America and liberals don't like Trump's extremist racism and stuff. The Republicans didn't like it either. They had like a playbook of like
a little much.
Yeah, they didn't like the like buffoonery to it. You know what I mean? They liked the way they used to package it, right? So a lot of them didn't care for it. Like, let's not forget, like the Tea Party was kind of like that offshoot for them, the wild Republicans, and they've taken over. The Tea Party has taken over, and what the rest of the Republicans realized was get down or lay down. Like, this is what we got. This is what we changed. And they got behind their boy. But whatever. Anyways. Thank you, y'all. Y'all are amazing.
Thank you.
I'm glad we got to get a lot of energy out. This was really
good. I love that. Good, I love Olay Friends. And I finally got Clay and Reese. I'm so excited. And Garrison and Apprins made their second appearances.
I love it. I always appreciate being on. It's always good to be with you all.